Thanks for tuning in to the Black Sunday podcast. I'm your host, Ian Wilson, a writer and musician and all-round horror fanatic from Fife, Scotland. Joining me on the podcast is Kevin Grossett, a filmmaker and self-proclaimed cinema fanboy living in Edinburgh. So without further ado, dim the lights, pop the lid off your favourite tub of ice cream, and hold on to your loved ones. The dissection is about to commence. Thanks everybody for tuning in to episode 7 of the Black Sunday podcast. This month we're discussing some of the Hammer horror classics, or classic specifically, The Devil Rides Out. So the background I've got on this one is devil worshippers plan to convert 2 new victims. That's what I was going on when I went into it. It's based on the Dennis Weekly book from the 1930s. With a budget of 280,000. So because I had that information there too, where it was just like the devil worshippers planning to convert 2 new victims, the victims I assumed at the time were Christopher Lee and the chap who plays Rex as well, Leon Green.
Yeah, there's no way that Lee was going to be taken under by those guys. No chance.
Yeah, I learned that pretty quick when he put things together.
Too experienced.
Yeah, man, that was class. I guess before we sort of jump into the film as well, it's worth kind of mentioning a couple of the other things about like Hammer horror or Hammer productions specifically as well. I know that this sort of era was considered more the golden age of Hammer. I always sort of thought of it as like the silver age of horror, with the golden age kind of being like Universal Monsters and all that kind of stuff. But I totally love, like, when it comes to Hammer horror, the thing that really always pops out to me the most is the artwork. When the movie posters, that's like always the thing that gets me, that I think makes me think this is going to be absolutely amazing. Just the way that they've got these like bright colours, and then they've got the big bold fonts that kind of lure you in. So that's
absolutely. This one's got Baphomet on the poster.
Exactly, just a big red thing. But
you're in for a treat.
Yeah, I mean, all of those ones, I don't know, they're like the kind of posters that I would have in my house, I think, it's kind of got that like pulpy sort of horror kind of things. That's like where we were talking about on the previous one with the Ray Harryhausen sort of stuff, when I went to that exhibition in Edinburgh as well. The poster for like 1 million years BC with a big sort of pink kind of letters and things on that. I don't know, it's just something that always jumps out. But that's the thing that I suppose that the original thing that kind of drew me to some of the Hammer films. Not that I've seen loads and loads of them either, but I would say the posters are the more well-known things for me anyway. As I say, the book based on the novel by Dennis Wheatley, I've never read it. I never even heard of him, if I'm being completely honest with you, and I kind of looked a bit into him. So there's a bit of mixed reviews. Some people just saying his writing's hard work, and other people saying, that it was amazing. Christopher Lee obviously thought it was amazing, because it seemed to be him that was really pushing for this to actually be made, basically. And he seemed to have quite an affection for the film too, saying that it was the best film. It was his favourite, basically, the best film he'd done in his career. And really, I think there was even talk of him wanting to do like a remake of it later in his life or something as well, that never happened.
I read that, where he wanted to play an older version of the same character.
It would have certainly been interesting. It's the kind of character that I think would actually be perhaps better with age. But
it's like, I don't know how old Christopher Lee was in this film. Probably 50-ish.
I don't know.
Maybe not even.
Yeah, maybe not even that. I think it's just one of these things where like they maybe comes across as seeming like older than he actually is. Because I know he lived to be
just got gravitas.
Aye, totally, man. Because he lived to be a fair age, eh? But you think if this was like, what was this, like 1967 or 68? I think was this one.
68, I believe. Yeah.
So, maybe in his 40s or maybe about 50, I suppose, at that. Totally unexpected as well, because I never really, I mean, with Christopher Lee, it's weird actually, because for him, when I was sort of doing a bit of a deep dive and all this stuff as well, he seemed to have like quite a, I don't know, like he didn't really seem to particularly like that he was mainly associated with horror. And he tried to we can jump at other bits as well, like basically trying to go to America to sort of drop this image of him for being into just being typecast basically, in like all these horror things. And actually just about an hour ago before we started recording this, I was on Twitter and I saw somebody actually posted an interview with him from the 60s, and he was talking about horror, and it was exactly the same thing. He basically said he plays loads of different characters and different things, but it just so happens that his most like famous work or the stuff that sells the most is the horrors, and so people associate him with horror, but he was sort of adamant that he does other things as well, kind of thing. So he did come across as, I don't know, maybe it's just the type of guy he was at the time, but he came across quite short, I thought, with like the interviewer, that he's a bit like, nah, this is not.
He wanted to be known for the Star Wars prequels. That was his main thing.
Exactly, man. But that's it. Like, I mean, when we were, like, for me, I'm always thinking of him in stuff that was the later stuff, like Lord of the Rings, and I didn't really necessarily associate him with all the old school horrors, like when we were teenager sort of age, I guess. It was more about what he was doing when he was older.
I don't think Hammer horror was getting shown that much on TV at that time. So it was probably just one of those weird time periods where it wasn't really
generational
in the consciousness.
And again, and it'll be the same with like Peter Cushing as well. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was just like as like Tarkin and Star Wars and stuff. And then when I went back and watching all these old horrors and stuff with him in it, it's like he was actually a pretty badass actor. You know what I mean?
As Van Helsing.
Hi, man. I was watching him in, what was it? It was like Twins of Evil or something like that recently as well, and just giving a banging performance in that. But it's weird that they kind of, for Hammer too, that they had their core of actors that they kind of depended on and had them, particularly like Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, in quite a lot of films together. So they were kind of reinventing horror, from like with, you think of like Karloff and Lugosi and that previously, and then I guess this is because there was a thing with Hammer, I think, where they were trying to get the production to take off. Was it late 30s or early 40s? There was a thing that happened. Obviously, it was like World War II and stuff. So it seemed to be like at the late 40s and then into the 50s, really, when they really became a big sort of production, I guess, with the Quatermass experiment. And then The Curse of Frankenstein as well, which again had Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in it. So I found
that was also directed by Terence Fisher, who directed this one.
Yeah, I know you want to speak about him as well. Like, and that's one of the ones, actually, Curse of Frankenstein was one of the ones that I'd seen too, which I guess we'll talk about in a second. Cool. I just think with Christopher Lee that I was doing when I was trying to find out some information too, that he was actually told originally that he couldn't be an actor because he was too tall. But then his height actually became his advantage in getting that, Frankenstein's monster in the role. And then that particular production earned 70 times its production cost. So then I guess that really kicked him on.
That's pretty good. I was going to say, sorry, you said about his height. There's actually one shot in this film where they climb in the window, and it's just the way the shot's framed when they come in. His head's basically poking out the top of the frame. And I remember thinking, that's a bit weird. I wonder why they shot it like that, but it's probably just
because he was
unavoidable because of his height. Yeah.
There's no other way. So I mean, after that, obviously they're really making a name for themselves, Hammer and also Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, I guess, and then they teamed up in like 1958 when it was Dracula, which is, they obviously before like the Ghost, they would speak about Universal and stuff too, and then this one particularly, Hammer's sort of thing that they kind of honed in on more was like the adding a bit more gore to it, and more of a sex sort of image, I suppose, and that became like the selling points, of especially, but you think about it in the 50s and stuff, like for horror and sci-fi, like that was kind of the B movie, like that's part of the recipe, I think that's really what just sold everything or made them money if they did. And I read some quotes at the time too that was like suggesting that women liked the idea of having their neck chewed by Christopher Lee. which
Oh wow.
which nowadays we're like, fucking hell, man. But yeah, maybe back then that's what maybe kickstarted some of that vampire fetish stuff that still lingers about today.
Probably.
And it was interesting too, like I say, with Christopher Lee not really wanting to get involved in horror so much. He didn't want to do any sequels to the Dracula films, but claimed that he was blackmailed into it by Jimmy Carreras, who was the president at Hammer, because he basically said he'd already sold the sequel, the movies each time. He said he'd sold them on to American distributors, and basically said to Lee that if he doesn't do it now, then he'll be putting all his friends out of work, for the people that have worked on the other films and blah blah blah. So he felt obliged to get involved, even though he didn't want to. He was
basically guilted into it.
Yeah, guilted into doing it and stuff. But I know you want to talk about Terence Fisher, so I think that might be a nice segue for you just to jump in and say about your info on the man.
Yeah, so I've got a slightly different background with horror, Hammer horror than you do. I've not really seen any of the films apart from this one. I just knew about, obviously, the famous ones. I think my parents used to watch them when they were teenagers. I think that's how I first heard about them. But yeah, the name Terence Fisher comes up a lot in, I read a lot of articles about the history of film and all that. And yeah, it seemed that this would be a good film to check out because it's seen as a sort of high watermark for Hammer, particularly because of his direction. And yeah, just reading a bit about his history is quite interesting. He was, when he left school, he joined the Navy for 5 years. And then when he came back, he managed to get a job in the camera department, basically as the clapper boy, does the film slate. Then he moved into editing before finally moving into directing. And then his first few films basically got pretty good notices. And when Hammer were looking for new talent, they just thought, this guy's going to do a good job for us. So they got him in for The Curse of Frankenstein.
Yeah, man.
And the rest is history.
So this guy's served his apprenticeship. Is this what you could do back in the day? Just get into the film, and then that's how you start off. You just you've got the clapper, and then you manage to just climb the ladder to be a director.
Changed days. It wouldn't happen that way now, but yeah, that's how Terence did it.
Yeah, man. I like one of the things about him too, with regards to Dracula, that he kind of did the change up with the story when the Hammer did it as well. That he changed so that Jonathan Harker was a vampire hunter from the get-go, rather than him kind of not knowing what's going down. He knew exactly who Dracula was, and they kind of made out that he was like a sort of, he worked for Van Helsing or whatever, so he knew. So he was there as a vampire hunter, and it's quite an interesting sort of take on it for him to take that, to change it.
Yeah, because it makes the story a bit more economical, I guess. And that with this film as well, I was going to talk about that later on, where the economy of it's crazy. I mean, the pacing of it is actually insane.
Absolutely, mate.
But we'll get to that. But yeah, I was going to say as well, so the screenplay for this was adapted by Richard Matheson, who was the author of I Am Legend.
Yeah, I saw that as well, man. That was one of the things I was going to talk about too. That's one of the amazing books.
Another sub bit of trivia, his son is one of the co-creators of Bill and Ted, so...
Really? I didn't know that.
Another legend.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I didn't know that's who his son was. I did when Richard Matheson's name popped up on it though, I was like, fucking hell, man. I was like, is that the guy who wrote I Am Legend? When I checked out who it was, I was like, that's really cool that he was involved.
Yeah. You're in for a treat.
Exactly, you know it. You've got a dream team already sort of going on from the cast through to director and writers on behind the scenes. It's just match made in heaven.
Oh yeah.
An interesting thing actually, when you're talking about family members, I read a thing that Christopher Lee's step-cousin was Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels. That was not something I'd come across as well.
Step-cousin?
His step-cousin,
okay. Right,
okay. But one of the things the reason that I can't even remember how I came across that, but I think it might have been just because when I was watching the film too, you got a bit the kind of the tone of the film and things like that, and just the vibes. I kind of had more of a James Bond sort of vibe to it, I thought, compared to because I know we spoke previously too when you're saying about Terence Fisher, where he was working on stuff like the Curse of the Werewolf and stuff, and it did have a totally different vibe. It didn't seem like, how sometimes you think that with a director, they've got their style that's identifiable no matter what. I know an extreme version of that might be something like Tim Burton, but in terms of this, it was completely different, I thought. It was more, and I don't know, I did kind of want to speak to you about it just because obviously with yourself being involved, maybe cinematography or filmmaking in general, it kind of had a feeling that you get when you watch movies from a certain era, I guess. But it doesn't really make sense what I'm going to say here, I suppose. Because part of it kind of reminded me of like Indiana Jones or something, just the way it's shot. I don't know, there was something about the feeling in the when I was watching it, and I didn't know what it was. I don't know why the film comes across as having that particular sort of feel or vibe or whatever.
I think what it might be is a lot to do with the lighting, which is it's very what I'd call it old Hollywood style.
Yeah,
and that means if you see the scenes where Christopher Lee's like walking up the stairs, you'll notice that there's like 4 shadows on the wall because he's being hit from lights in different directions, you know?
Right.
And as cinematography's gone on, particularly now, I just saw the trailer for the new Dune film, and it really hammers it home that now, no pun intended, that everything's very naturalistic these days. You know, you kind of want things to feel very, I don't know why, there just seems to be a push towards documentary naturalism. So when you do light things in this more theatrical style, it really stands out, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's the thing that really stands out to us looking back, you know?
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know if it's just the different eras of cinema that you kind of get, like even with music, I guess, you know what I mean? Like if you listen to it, you can tell when the song's like 80s or 90s just by, I don't know if it's the production of it or whatever too, but you could just have a certain thing with it. I don't know if cinema had the same deal. I know you
it kind of did. With the lighting, it was, sorry to interrupt, it was just because of the star system they had, the studio would basically be like, the tone of the thing doesn't matter as much as lighting up the star. So then the cinematographers they were in this kind of weird bind where they had to try and make things feel moody or appropriate to the story, but then also light up the star.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty funny interviews with Gordon Willis, who shot The Godfather, who was basically like, yeah, I just did what I wanted to do. I didn't care about that shit.
Yeah. That's kind of
And I think you need people like that to kind of push things forward a bit, I think.
Yeah, man, totally. That reminds me, like I was telling you previously, I was watching the documentary about Leap of Faith about The Exorcist. And that one, William Friedkin, definitely similar sort of thing. Like that guy just seemed to have his own agenda, didn't give a shit about anything that was going on. Although he claimed that it was like sort of intuition that he was going on, that it was all sort of happy accidents that everything came together, but then he thought there was maybe some sort of higher power that just made it so, like fate basically played its part in bringing everything together. But he definitely didn't think there's a solid structure to how he's going to do it, in a certain sense anyway. Kind of the same deal with like when he was talking about with the score, which was actually interesting too, because when he said he was doing The Exorcist, he didn't want the score to basically tell the audience how to feel. But I noticed, just because I'd recently watched that when I watched this, it was the opposite, where it was like the score's definitely telling you how to feel. You know,
so James Bernard was the composer, and it's the music's just front and center.
Yeah,
and it's really loud as well, and completely draws you in or emphasizes what's going on.
Exactly, it just draws in the tension on that. I suppose one last thing just before I kind of jump into the actual film itself there too, when I was talking about Christopher Lee, how he was kind of pushing back against this like horror image that he was trying to shed when he went to America and stuff. He actually got offered the role of Dr. Loomis in the original Halloween film and turned John Carpenter. He turned John Carpenter down, and then claimed that was his biggest regret for his career, I guess, like afterwards when he didn't do it. But I suppose
because I think John Carpenter had only done 1 or 2 films by then. He did Dark Star and maybe something else, but he wasn't really known, I guess, until after Halloween.
Exactly. Not the like mega titan guy that he became. Yeah, I suppose it's the risk you take. But I suppose at the time too, man, if he's pushing away from not wanting to do it, try to get himself out of that whole genre, then it makes sense that he rejected it. But I can imagine it being a bit of a shitter like in the long run.
And then he said yes to Gremlins 2. He's great in that.
One of the other things that I was going to kind of say too, that I found kind of funny, was that they changed the name of this film to The Devil's Bride in America because they thought that The Devil Rides Out sounded too much like a Western. And I'm just like imagining like Cowboys from Hell, like kick that, do the remake Pantera style.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the title. I thought it sounded like it had been maybe an Americanized title, like The Devil Rides Out. I thought maybe the Americans had gone the other way, be like, nah, we need to give this a more kick-ass title.
Yeah, no, man.
You know,
opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know where the guy. I don't even know where that the offer is actually from. I'm guessing he must be British. Is he? The Dennis Wheatley. So maybe we can look into that as well. Just when we're talking about it as well, a couple of things, because normally on the other episodes, when we're not too sure about things that we're going to check out, one of the things I actually did look at after, as I say, when I was watching that Exorcist documentary, and then afterwards, because it kind of jump-started my memory again, when we were talking about the actor that hurt their back, I think it was actually that we were both correct in that situation, that the girl, Linda Blair, and her mum both hurt their backs in that film, and were in the two scenes that we were talking about, basically.
Right.
So
okay.
That's one of the things that we can clear up from a previous episode.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but I mean, jumping into the film as well, you're totally right with it becomes pretty clear that Christopher Lee's got things under control in this film, you know, from the start, basically.
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you want to go into the scenes and then we can talk about tone and imagery later on? Or
But yeah, go for it, mate.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say about that opening, would you call it a party?
Yeah.
Where they try to rescue Simon from.
Yeah.
And I just find it really funny that the two characters, Richelieu and Rex, they just sort of casually walk around the party without being thrown out. Yeah, you know, it's like they only get thrown out at a certain point, but not before they've gleaned the information that they need.
Exactly.
It's like no one cares until they do care. They're like, oh, wait a second, we should be throwing these guys out.
Yeah. When he's moving, just the way they kind of move around the room so casually. And it's like with Nicholas saying Rex, that's like, to just like go casually eavesdrop on the conversations just so they can get. You can tell he's already got his suspicions about what's going down here, but he just wants to be certain about what's going on, and he's just like going around totally chilled with a cigar, just catching bits of information here and there from people that are talking about it.
Because the film's set in 1929, so maybe in those days in England there was maybe you did have a certain etiquette. Window of time. Yeah, etiquette that you can't throw someone out after 20 seconds, but 5 minutes is fine, and he just uses that 5 minutes to the best of his ability. And
posing himself on the guy's telescope as well. That was one that kind of made me laugh too. Where it's just goes up the stairs saying he needs to see, he's just like, when it basically says, I need to use your telescope to have a look or whatever, and then goes in. And the room itself's pretty impressive. I
like how he sort of casually just mentions the giant, what is it, a pentagram on the floor, something like this?
Is it not a pentagram? Is it the Baphomet? Is it not a Baphomet that's on the ground?
Oh yeah, Baphomet, and then it's got some kind of star thing with it.
Yeah.
And then I think he's just making sort of comments like, "Oh, that's not an astrology map, is it?"
Yeah.
Astronomy map, sorry. I don't know what he says, something weird like that. And
then there's like the rustle in the in the cupboard or whatever that he suspects about what it's going to be. He opens up a case to find that there's chickens in there or roosters or whatever it is, and he's just like, that's it, that's him. He solved the case pretty quick after he saw those.
Yeah, you realise if you see a black rooster and a white hen, then that means these people are. I mean, that's the clue. That's the interesting thing about his character. You know, he's kind of like a Christian action hero. You know, and it's like it's just so funny how he keeps dropping in, like he just knows everything. He knows all the specific dates that the devil worshippers will be out. He's got all the gadgets, whether it be, you know, Mercury or a cross or just whatever you need. He's got it all. He is a prototype of James Bond, I'm sure.
Yeah, man. And he doesn't mess about either. That's like one of the things, basically, as soon as he finds out that his friend's into some black magic, he just cracks the boy in the jaw. I knew there was shit that was going to go down at that point too, because when the guy, like, he lands on the Baphomet or whatever, like you say, the pentagram on the floor or whatever, and it's weird because it kind of bounces. You know what I mean? It's not like a solid floor. And then obviously I was kind of like, someone's going to go down here, and they do. Obviously, that's things that come up. But like you were talking about, the pace of the film, like it just moves so fast. Like this is the start. You know what I mean? One thing actually, right at the start, that made me be like, what? Not because of anything to do with the plot or anything, but when they're in the car at the very, very start before they go to the guy's house, because this is effectively how it goes down. They're just like, oh, I wonder what our mate's up to. Oh, he's got a new house. You want to go check out his gaff? But then, like,
that's essentially it, yeah.
And then Christopher Lee's got that like weird car pipe that he uses to talk to the driver. I've never ever seen that before, like ever in my life in any film or I was just
Because I think I've seen older films that were made in Hollywood where it's more like an actual phone. So I don't know why you had that pipe thing.
Aye, it's just like there's no other way to describe it. Just like a pipe that he speaks into that goes through it, and it's not even. I mean, it's not even like a limo that he's at the back of or in. It's like a normal car. It's like surely the guy can hear you, mate.
Yeah.
I didn't think there's a glass partition or anything. But I have no idea if that was like an actual. I take it must have been like a thing. Maybe this is what the rich people had back in the day. Like, but I just thought that was set. That's the kind of small detail that makes me think that gets me on board for a film.
This is well directed. You thought, yes.
This is going to be going good. The kind of thing I also kind of laughed at after he knocks out Simon and then kidnaps him out of the black magic cult.
Rescues him, come on.
Yeah, sorry, rescues him.
Just a bit of tough love.
Yeah. He just like when he gets back to his own house and he's just like, well, thank God that's over. like
yeah, I know, you think, what, is that the end of the film? He's just
3 minutes in.
We're done.
Yeah. And like you say too, it's a kind of the way that he is, it's that like scholar's kind of approach. I guess that's like we were kind of talking about how he just knows everything that's going down, and that it's quite interesting. I don't think there's really too many horrors that I've seen that are like that. Not in that way, anyway. And I can't, certainly not in any modern times that I can think of. You obviously have people that are kind of a bit like, and they can refer to like, this book or whatever. But Nicholas, this character, is just like, he just knows. I suppose there's another couple of things that I kind of laughed at as well that we'll get to, because there's a few of these like key scenes. I guess when you start getting to like the horror aspect of it, or the darker tone.
Yeah, I think I know the part you're going to get to.
Well, maybe, I don't know, because there's a few, I suppose. But there's the main thing there that sort of, when he starts to get like strangled with the crucifix.
Oh, yeah.
That was something that I wasn't really quite expecting, and I imagine at the time as well might have been maybe not shocking, as maybe if it was like back in the 30s and stuff, I could imagine it too, but it was still, it kind of gave you I wasn't expecting it to be like, or there's going to be some sort of actual spiritual powers that play here, that's the guys being controlled by people that aren't anywhere. They're just like able to walk onto him like, well, we're gonna have to kill this guy with this crucifix. And I suppose that kind of lays the thing too, because for Christopher Lee's character to be like, you're safe with the crucifix, and it's like, nah, you're not. you're anything but safe here. It's going to use the crucifix to kill you. It kind of makes you sort of think as well that this is going to turn it on its head a little bit. Because maybe that is the sort of stuff at the time that they would use in horrors, that'd be like, you hold up the crucifix, you're safe kind of thing. And in this, we're going, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to take it a different way. So he's going to have to get a wee bit more... going to have to think of a few more different approaches to saving his boy here. And
then the poor old butler thinks he's done him a favour by, saving him, taking the crucifix off him.
Oh, yeah.
And doesn't realise that the guy's just going to escape out into the night.
Yeah, that's it. He saved him from choking with the crucifix, and then now he's away. That's where the thing I think comes with like the Baphomet floor when he goes. Does he go back there, or does Chris? I've got.
They go back there. They basically go straight back there. And break in, and all the devil worshippers are gone, and then they go back upstairs and they check on the hen and the rooster, and he says something like, well, thank God we've saved your lives.
Yeah. And then he looks at the clavicule of Solomon, or he talks about that, certainly. Is that what the book is? Oh yeah, it is, when he like, that's the kind of acting too, mate, that's just like, when he just finds the book and he just flicks through the pages and he's just like, Jesus, kind of thing, like gives it to Rex to have like, what is it? It's like, have a look at this.
I think Rex says something like, is it valuable? And he goes, invaluable.
yeah, that's exactly what he says, right? The clavicule of Solomon. And that's when like the smoke comes up from the Baphomet pentagram floor.
Well, yeah, I mean, talk about a controversial scene.
I know.
I mean, I was not sure, like, I thought this was going to be Baphomet, it seemed like he's on the floor, something's going to appear, and we find out later that this was some kind of demon that I guess is in league with Baphomet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's no delicate way to put this. The demon is just a black guy.
Exactly. It was a bit of a what the fuck moment as well when I was watching that too. And the only thing that's really, I mean, the only thing to go on that would make him be anything other than just a black guy is that his eyes are kind of bulging out his head. And that's where it's like, oh, don't look in his eyes. But it's just the way that their reaction is like, oh my God. You know what I mean? It's just like, what, to
I think
a black guy?
I think Nicholas says something like, don't look in the eyes, then immediately looks in his eyes.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, it's weird. It's funny, I was looking at comments about this scene online, and one guy was saying, oh, that's just me stoned standing in McDonald's.
Totally, man.
But yeah, it was a really weird scene, and I was thinking, because I was like, why did they just choose to have like a black guy? And then I was like, is it meant to be a kind of subversive joke at the time, like that upper class white English people, that would be like a really scary thing for them to be confronted with a black person or something? I didn't really get why, because I don't know if it was originally like that in the book, you know. I'm not, or it might not even be that way in the script. It could have just been something that Fisher came up with.
Exactly.
Just like, oh, this will freak people out.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right as well what you're saying there too, because the way that I would say with these guys they come across as this like regal. That was another thing that really drew me as well when I started thinking about it, like kind of like when I was watching the film too. I'm like, is this what the upper elite? Is this like what Boris Johnson all that shit get up to, where they go around with their like fucking Latin and everything or something at these like big mansion parties and stuff? So I don't know if it's meant to be on that kind of level as well. What you mean, like the Bullingdon Club? So yeah, in that case, it could be that. Yeah, you could be right there with the same with like scared of black people or whatever.
The scene actually works quite well as a scary scene just because of the music and the editing and everything, and Lee's acting. And like you said, the guy's stare, his bulbous eyes it's unnerving, you know?
Yeah. Just unnatural, I suppose. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not where I thought the scene was going to go. I thought it was going to be Baphomet with the sort of goat type head and all that.
Kind of like what you see later. I mean, I don't know as well what you go on about. I don't know what their use of budgetary. Well, I mean, it was quite a big budget and stuff too, so I suppose they could have had like all these prosthetic things. Maybe he was going for like, it needs to be something more original. This guy's able to make his eyes pop out his head or whatever, so that's going to be.
Well, it certainly was original.
Aye, so you get the part. The thing I was going to say, just with another sort of ridiculousness for Nicholas's character after that, because you know, there's like the point where Rex is basically already fallen in love with Tanith, this lassie that's you know, part of that. So the two being Simon and Tanith that are going to be the two that are going to get converted by these devil worshippers. But then I like how, like, after that scene, there's just a throwaway comment from Nicholas being like, oh, I had to go to London and try to find Tanith. I had to look in 28 hotels before I found her. Didn't know there were so many hotels in London. It's like, what? Just no bother. I just went to London and looked in 28 hotels to find her. And it's just nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Christopher Lee disappears for quite large sections of this film, I noticed. He's kind of gone for quite a bit of it. Yeah, I think at that point he just nonchalantly says, right, I'm going to have to go to the British Museum because I need to look at some books on the occult that are kept under lock and key. This is like I say, he's got all the answers. He knows everything about the occult. Almost.
He knows how to break into the British Museum to get on the books.
Not a problem.
I guess. Yeah, so like you say, he just disappears for like quite a massive chunk of the film. Although it is kind of weird because, like you say, with it moving at such a pace, I noticed at one point, I kind of felt like it was getting into the final third, or what I imagine would have been the final third, and it was only like the halfway point in the film. I wasn't quite sure how they were going to keep it going, but they managed to do it.
Yeah, the structure goes a little bit crazy at the end, but yeah, I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I can't remember in terms of chronology if the Baphomet party in the woods happens before the car chase.
No, the car chase is next, because I was going to talk to you about that.
Yeah. Carry on.
Well, so what was your thoughts on that classic car chase?
Well, I mean, it begins with they're having a nice conversation in the car, and then you realise that the villain Mokata can converse with Tanith across space via the mirror in the car.
Yeah, he's looking.
So that's kind of like, that got my attention. That's like yeah, mirrors seem to be able to hypnotize people in this film quite easily because Nicholas does it as well with Simon.
Yeah.
So yeah, mirrors have a bizarre power in this film.
He doesn't quite have the same hypnosis abilities as what Mokata does though later on, but He's still
No.
but there's still hypnosis is definitely a superpower that they both have.
Yeah. So, yeah, then it turns into, because Rex is in love with Tanith, he's basically going to invite a devil worshipper to Sunday lunch with his
His
family, his sister, yeah, and his niece and all this. And then, yeah, I don't know, just a sort of comedy moment where he gets out the car and then you just hear the sound of the car tearing off.
down the drive.
And then he immediately gets in his brother-in-law's car that's just been fixed. And then they get into this car chase going at like Mach 2 down the English countryside.
Like a single lane country road.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely manic. And then obviously, thanks to some of Mokata's intervention,
He tries a couple of things.
Tanith, what does he do in the windscreen? I don't understand what happened to that.
I don't know. He clouds it. It just goes like. The thing I love that bit though as well, because it's like he's driving along, he's looking through the windscreen, and then it just immediately becomes like clouded, so he can't see anything. But his immediate reaction is just to punch a massive hole in the windshield, like no bother.
Yeah,
just so he can look through this tiny hole. So he's managing to pursue her, and then Mokata just summons fog basically out of nowhere to make him so he can't see, and then but doesn't stop him at all from continuing to drive as fast as he can, guessing where the road is, and then going veering off into a tree where he's completely fine. No airbags or anything, but he's totally fine.
Yeah, the car's wasted, but he's just got a little bit of cramp. He sort of stretches a bit and off he goes.
Totally unscathed. The thing about that too, though, that I like is that there's absolutely no delay to the story that he's crashed the car and he's lost her, but he immediately he's right there again when all the stuff's going down, which is the bit you're talking about, I guess, in the devil worship in the woods.
Yeah, Baphomet's actual appearance.
Yeah.
I was going to say that scene was done. Did you notice it was done day for night? So it's like they just shot it during the day and
try to darken it.
Tried to darken it a bit and make it all blue.
Yeah, I noticed that they do it maybe late. Maybe it is that bit, is it? Or because I did make a note as well. Where I was going to say to you, if you noticed that it was daytime, I think that maybe I kind of took a note of that when it was after he phones Nicholas to come. So at that point where he goes, where they're in the woods and stuff, and they're all doing their crazy rituals, it sort of has a more of a folk horror kind of vibe. That's where I kind of thought I was going to go with after that, which is quite cool. It's quite flavour of the month, I guess, these days, or flavour of the year. I don't know. But
I like the way that Baphomet appeared, because it just felt very matter of fact. It wasn't very dramatic. It was just like someone turned on a light bulb and he was just there.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that at that point too, where you're going up, because I don't know if you really see Mokato properly before that, apart from when you see him like in the mirror, like the rear view mirror, like talking to Tanith or whatever.
Well, I guess he's at the beginning of the film though, at the party, right? Because he's the one that takes Simon away.
Yeah, right enough. So this Charles Gray that plays him, like when I was watching that, I'm just like, this guy is 100% in a James Bond film. But I haven't seen a James Bond film. I think the only sort of James Bond film I've seen is a Pierce Brosnan one in like the year 2000 sort of ish. But so I don't know if I don't know how I can make this connection with this guy, but I'm like, this guy is a Bond villain. He just looks like one, and I don't know if it's because somehow I've maybe seen something with him in a James Bond film. But I was just like, this guy, and it kind of had that same sort of vibe as I was going in the film, that he just came across.
He probably just communicated it to you through a mirror one time.
That's it when I was watching it through the TV. But he just, maybe it's just a vibe, like I was saying with the film as well, that it had that kind of James Bond vibe to it, that guy, he just came across as a Bond villain kind of in this, I thought, as well. And then, it was just the whole, the goat of Mendes, or whatever he calls it, when the Baphomet comes.
Yeah.
So there's the bit where, like, Rex phones Nicholas to basically be like, I found him, you need to get over here.
It's a convenient payphone.
The payphone, I noticed, was exactly the same colours as his car. It was like black and yellow. I was like, I didn't.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen a black. I don't know what that deal. Maybe that was a happy accident. Maybe they just liked those colours back in the day. But obviously, being us in Scotland and stuff, we're just used to the red payphones back in the day. It was like, that was one of the things I thought was weird. But Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how exactly they were going to manage to, because it's quite an intense scene, because it's the devil basically that they're having a showdown with at this point, which I don't even think was the halfway point, or maybe it was roughly the halfway point of the film. So I'm like, well, this is pretty, normally this would be the climax. And it was like, so how are they going to get down? How are they going to fight this guy? What are they going to do here exactly? Their whole plan, which worked, was to basically drive in like full pelt in their motor car with their headlights shining at the devil, and then Rex throws a crucifix at him, and that's just does the job. Like, so I suppose that's
it pops him like a balloon, basically.
I pops him away like a balloon, and then just the sort of element of smoke left where he once was.
And when they're driving in there, I think Nicholas is. It doesn't sound like he's doing one of his incantations. I think he's actually just doing a prayer at that point, but I might be wrong.
No, you're right. I don't know what exactly it was, but when I was looking over some stuff that said he was reading some psalm or from the Bible, like 9.11 blah 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 or whatever it was. So he is just
like I say, Christian action hero.
He's a soldier of God.
He kicks arse for the Lord.
Aye, he just doesn't give a shit if it's the devil or not. He's just going to have a showdown with this guy, save his mate. Because you might think at some point, I mean, even if it was a good friend, you might be like, this guy's in too deep, man. The devil's here. He's in the woods with the actual devil. He's beyond salvation. Like, we can't save this guy. We're just going to get ourselves killed here. But not him. He's just like, fuck this. You get on the side door. It's not even like he's sitting in the car. He's like riding on the side, isn't it? Like the wee step or something at the side of it. And then just like launches the crucifix at him. I mean, thank God it worked. Like, as we were talking about though before, where it was like the whole thing with the crucifix not being the salvation. In this case, it was. So maybe the classics still stand up against that.
It's been redeemed.
Yeah. I think that was roughly about the halfway point. And I kind of, I mean, because as I say, that kind of had the feeling of the climax to the film, that it kind of felt like beyond that, like some serious shit's got to go down now, because where do they go from there,
Where indeed.
And then, again, unexpectedly so, even if I had this, like if you were writing a script, I don't know how, like, say it was quite a bold move of Makata just to rock up to the house and they just let him in.
Yeah, it was kind of genius as well, because I guess, he had to get the car back to him.
So it was like, no bother. No hard feelings, mate. We had to just bring your car back, but can I come in? Yeah, sure. But I've heard that you're a bad guy. I heard that mere hours ago you were having a party with the devil. It's like, and you come, have a cup of tea. Very British, polite manner.
Yeah, English manners, it's just, even if the devil himself shows up, you've just got to let him in.
Yeah, you've just got to bring him in for milk and 2 sugars. That's the point where I think when he starts using this hypnosis.
This scene was brilliant. I thought it was amazing.
Aye, when he uses it to better effect than what Nicholas managed to do. And then just, that whole scene it was really cool, the way that he just locks in. With managing to basically use the entire house as like he's, like they're all puppets on this string, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, so Marie is the character that he hypnotizes, right? The sister of Rex.
Yeah, so it's like Nicholas's niece or something.
Oh, yeah.
And their daughter, who plays a part in the film too, that's kind of sort of saves the day here just by imposing herself as children do, and when people are in the middle of a discussion, just opens the door and that breaks his concentration, which breaks the spell. Which is
while he's doing the spell, it's quite interesting. Like his eyes are so blue. I was like, have they given him contact lenses to make his eyes look that way?
Yeah, man, that's one of the things I noticed in the film as well. I didn't think he had contact lenses, but you kind of feel like that was something that obviously played a part in this guy getting the role, I guess, or maybe getting working as an actor in general, just having one of these qualities. I don't know. It's like
talk about like blue eyes.
It's like you talk about people like Paul Newman and all that kind of stuff as well, or whatever. But yeah, that's insane. So he's basically like managed to hypnotize the woman who's invited him in her house for tea, even though she knows for a fact that he's just been dancing with the devil in the woods with a satanic cult, and had been warned against it by her uncle and brother or whatever. And then he manages to hypnotize her, but also he gets Tanith to basically start that she's going to kill Rex because he's dozed off. The guy's useless, man, in this film. Really, he's the he lets.
Well, he's done a lot of good driving. Like he's had a bit of a rough day, man. Just let him have a little nap.
Aye, his job is to watch her, and he's just like sleeps right away. And what is Simon again? What happens to him? He's there too, eh? He's something happening with him when he's.
Yeah, he starts strangling the brother-in-law, Richard.
Yeah, that's what it was. He starts strangling him. So that's how he's going to do it. So he's going to hypnotize them to the point where they murder and then escape, and he's going to take them back to the satanic cult because he needs their souls. So basically, it's a lot of hard work on his part to get them, even though they're reluctant to join. Did they ever really elaborate on why it was a necessity for these, just because they're too far gone? They know what's going down, so now they have to join.
I didn't really understand it, to be honest. Was it because there were two young people and it's sort of like a sacrifice or something? I don't know. It was a little bit vague.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that.
I was going to say about the daughter who you mentioned. She got a really funny line just before the chase kicked off, or when it did kick off. Do you remember that?
I don't remember her line.
So it's like, Tanith's car takes off, and then her uncle, Rex, tears off in the other car. And then it cuts to the kid. She goes, "He didn't stay for long."
Oh, yeah.
She gets a big close-up. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. I suppose that makes sense because there's a whole big thing with her where she's excited about him like showing up, eh? Because he ends up running to meet him, and the driveway is just like a massive circle. So he basically ignores her and drives. She runs to one end of the circle, and he drives beyond her around. So she probably didn't get. I think maybe she does get a quick hug before Tanith tears off in the car.
That's about it.
Yeah. I think you get a good visual after the whole hypnosis scene as well of what's going to go down. Because when darkness falls, then you see her going absolutely mental, like possessed.
This is Tanith, yeah.
Yeah. Then you get I suppose the next sort of key scene is when they make their protective circle. And it's obviously something that's done quite a lot in cinema, but do you not always feel that these like people sometimes make a circle of salt or whatever it is? This one's quite an elaborate one with patterns and I'd imagine like little symbols that are supposed to keep evil away.
Yeah, as I read online, Christopher Lee's character draws a perfect circle freehand.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it's implied because he's the one drawing it, isn't it?
Oh, right, but you don't see it.
So
I was going to say. You don't
no, it's like he didn't use like a protractor or something. Or no, is it that or a compass? Is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah.
Well, some people can do that.
Can they? I don't know. I thought it was okay. Whatever. He can.
He can.
He's got the Lord on his side.
maybe not that size of a circle with salt or whatever it is that he's puts down. But even then, I always think that with these things though, that the circle's always so small. For like, it's like, why don't you make it bigger so you can move about? You've made a circle that you can barely fucking stand in, like the five of you or whatever.
You literally painted yourself into a corner.
Aye. So like, what? And you're planning on staying there for a long time. What happens if you need a piss? You can't go anywhere. That's the kind of thing I would be thinking of. Like, you're going to have to rethink
Make a
this.
circle that has a urinal in it.
Make a circle, we'll all get in the bathroom and make a circle right around there. Or the whole
Just
room.
use the bathtub.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of, at that point, I thought that the way that they were going to break the circle, because there's a bit where Rex, or is it Simon, where he's like thirsty, and I thought he was going to like get because I think he says, he's like, I wish there was some water. And they're like, there is right there, like literally right next to you. I thought he was going to like pick it up and then throw it at the circle to kind of like break it. But no,
yeah, he just complains it doesn't taste right.
Aye. But that's because I was at that bit too. I was a bit confused why, because he's like, here, try it, and the guys go try it, and then Christopher Lee's like, no, like you're not doing this at all. This is like when stuff's going down. So I don't know what the significance, like what would have happened if he had tasted the water, because it's not like any ill effects come to Simon.
I don't know. Maybe it's just you get like devil germs or something if you drink from the same glass. I don't know.
It could be. But then you get possibly my favourite scene in the whole film, which is the tarantula scene.
Oh yeah.
Which is a mixture of special effects and just basically filming a normal size tarantula spider on the ground. It's implied that it's massive with the cuts to the to when it is the special effects, I guess. pretty clever, I suppose, the way that they achieved that. I'm not sure how they would do it. Have you got any insight into this kind of thing?
Yeah, I didn't think the shots of the actual tarantula worked that well generally, because I guess it was kind of hard to cheat the scale of it, you know.
You're talking about
apart from in those.
Yeah,
when you actually see a live tarantula, I don't think they worked as well as the scenes that looked sort of animated, you know.
Aye, that's what I was meaning there. That it's just like cut into shots of a tarantula that's a completely normal sized tarantula on the ground that's implied that it's massive. But yeah, it definitely does not work. That's meant.
Yeah,
to be.
No wonder Christopher Lee wanted a modern version with better effects.
Yeah, man. But it's still pretty. It's probably one of the. I don't know, because then you've got like the girl who comes in. That whole scene when he's like, no, that's not your daughter, but he's absolutely certain it's not her. When the parents are like, at the same time, I don't understand how when the parents are like, right, so there's evil coming to this house, so we're all going to get in the circle, apart from our daughter who is going to go with the butler and stay in another part of the house or whatever. This doesn't seem the sort of thing that you would do, thinking, she'll be fine. She's not in any sort of protective circle.
They don't want her. Oh, all right, they do. All right.
Exactly. So then, yeah, the bit where it's just like the daughter comes in the room again, and then Christopher or Nicholas is like, no, that's not your daughter. That's just a pretend. They're trying to get you to leave the circle. And then, what is it? The bit after that where oh no. After the tarantula, is that actually when you get the angel of death or whatever that comes riding in on a horse?
Yeah, it is.
So
because it's before the big ceremony scene.
Yeah. So after the tarantula fails, they get the angel of death, who comes. It's basically like a winged skeleton on a horse. And sorry. Because
it looks like something off of like an Iron Maiden album cover.
Yeah, I think Iron Maiden used lines from this film in like The Number of the Beast or something. I'm sure I read that like in some sort of weird trivia thing as well. So it definitely comes across like Iron Maiden. You're right. They obviously were massively influenced by these films. So if you're a fan of Iron Maiden, you probably like this film. But this bit's like Christopher Lee's saying that he's got the last two lines of the Susama ritual or something like that. But he's like, I'm not going to read that. He's like, this is his like Hail Mary thing that he's like, I've got these in my back pocket. The last two lines, I can say them. That'll save us. But I'm not saying them because if I do, then it might basically destroy us all and alter time and space, which is quite a heavy thing. And then obviously when the angel of death comes and he's basically saying, I'll only do it if we're definitely going to die. So this thing comes to get them. And then the water, I think
he's like, all right, we're definitely going to die now.
Like 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes later, I think the water does get spilled, and it breaks the circle and stuff like that. And then he does it, but everything's, for a heavy thing like, it's going to alter time and space. He basically says the lines and then that's it. Nothing happens. But then, nothing happens. Nothing happens to them in that moment. But then it's, so effectively now Peggy, the daughter's gone. She's been taken by a satanic cult. But again, the parents are pretty chill. I'm like, so they've taken her, basically.
It's just the British stiff upper lip, you can't lose it, You just gotta keep calm and carry on.
Roll with them. Keep calm and carry on, I like it, man. Just rolling with the punches. So their daughter's gone. Tanith, where is she at that point? She gets taken.
Dead.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's right. She's dead, because the angel of death can't return without taking a soul, so he takes her soul. So she's gone, and Peggy's gone now as well. But they're going to use. So now they're going to use her. They're going to use Peggy to like draw in Tanith's soul or something like that. Is that what they were going to? I don't know. There's going to they have some sort of use for her that's tied to Tanith. I can't remember exactly what it was they're going to do.
Yeah.
And that's like, I guess this is the massive showdown as well, I guess, that you're getting, which I don't know if it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's as big as what they like the showdown with with the devil in the woods is. I would have maybe. I think the set is a bit small. It sort of looks like a function room or something, like Anstruther Legends or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think if they were like if they'd swapped those two sort of scenes, or maybe not the scenes around, but the setting around, then personal preference, I think the woods for the finale would have been better. But
I think building up to just sort of like a back room is a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas it looks like it could have been like a bingo hall or something that they just converted.
Yeah. It's probably just like some back lot thing at like, I don't know, what's the London Studios or whatever it's called, is it?
I forgot the ones that I thought it was at Boreham Wood. Is that where they filmed
Is that what
it?
it was? I don't think I even looked into actually where the thing was for that. So you get an explosive finale.
Yeah, you certainly do. I mean, I can't even remember. Is it not when basically the last syllable of the incantation is said, literally everything explodes?
Yeah.
I mean, that was quite a comedic moment. You know, it's just calmly. Is it the mother who's saying it, or it's Tanith through her? Is that right?
Yeah. Tanith like possesses her or something.
Yeah, and literally as soon as she delivers that last word, explosions just start going off all around. And again, everyone's still pretty calm, apart from the people who are being exploded.
Yeah, it's kind of. I guess that's another thing that's got that like Indiana Jones vibe too, eh? Like when they're.
It's kind of like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
right. So maybe
exactly.
like Spielberg's probably into Hammer horror. I bet he was a fan.
Yeah, definitely. And you get the happy ending too. Before that, actually, there's the whole bit with Nicholas, with his character, where he basically summons Tanith from beyond the grave as well, and he's trying to find out where they are, eh? And then she won't go in the room because the devil's there, I guess. And he's basically trying to force her to do it.
Yeah.
To the point where like he doesn't care if he destroys his lassie's soul. He's determined she has to go into this house. But there was no need for it in the end anyway. So how did they find? Have I missed a bit out there? How did they find that house? How did they know where?
Because they said the thing about the serpent, which reminded Rex of the thing that's on the gates of the mansion.
Yeah, right enough. Yeah, that's right. And the whole twist, happy ending. Ends up being, I mean, who doesn't love a happy ending, right? Time ends up being reversed. So it goes back to the point before Tanith dies and Peggy's stolen and all that stuff. And they remember, but it never actually happened. And the soul...
it's like a sort of Christopher Nolan ending like 30 years prior.
Yeah, totally. Without much of a... Like, probably all condensed into like 45 seconds or something. It was just like, wake up. And then, I suppose maybe a wee bit longer than that. But yeah, they just know that things have changed. Like how we're back here, back to this point, like a last save location, and then Tanith comes in all happy and all that kind of stuff. So she's not dead. And then then again, like Christopher Lee's just as I don't know, just this regal character that he is as well. Matter of factly, just being like, well, the Angel of Death needed a soul, so it's basically they took Makata's soul instead of Tanith's, swapped them out, and he's way back. So the bad guy is now definitely destroyed and the way to hell after with everything else like exploding and all that kind of stuff.
Everyone else lived happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. I mean, like I say, I didn't take lots of notes when I was watching it because I was so drawn into the film. You know what I mean? It was just like a couple, like it's probably why I've probably jumped through it pretty quick compared to what we normally do there. But it was just, there was, I don't know, like the scene, it just moved at such a pace that it was like, it just had you hooked basically from the get go right in. And as well, I mean, it had like we were kind of saying, like such a good, just I guess from the director to the cast and everything involved as well. It was just the characters really likable, memorable. It didn't drag at all. You know what I mean? And just for me as well, like Christopher Lee, even though you say he disappears for a large part of the film, that was the thing that was really the engine of the film for me. Just his character, the way it is, like you're saying, with him kind of being like a superhero almost. Yeah,
I've got a few notes on the sort of general tone. I mean, I think by this point, Hammer knew what their audience expectations were, and it seems to me anyway, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that what they like to provide is a sort of roller coaster ride that then has like a sort of happy ending. So it could also, I guess, be compared sort of like to a haunted house. Like you go through a few scares, but then you come back out to reality at the end, and it's all fine, you know.
Yeah, it's just a thrill.
Exactly.
It's not going to linger on you.
Yeah. I thought, because I was reading, it was like you said earlier, this one was a bit toned down from the other films, which apparently have sex and more violence, but the gore in this isn't really shown. Like, even when the goat gets sacrificed, you don't really see, you know, like the knife go in or things like that. You see the blood later and everything.
Yeah.
A few things. Yeah, just like, as I'm saying, the script and the editing is very economical. So there's a lot of exposition in the film, but I noticed that most of it's delivered when they're like on the move, like either in a car or like walking somewhere, you know, rather than just standing around.
Yeah, totally.
And then, it's just, I was just going to say, like, they cut quite efficiently between, you know, what's just been discussed and, you know, they'll be discussing something and then they'll immediately jump to show you that thing happening, you know? Yeah. Or it'll be like when they escape from that first demon, it's probably the highest Christopher Lee's character's blood pressure gets when he's like, run! And then all of a sudden, like, they're just, like, gunning it down the road again in the Bentley or whatever it is. And Rex just chilled. He says, oh, well, thanks for saving my life, and I totally believe you now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that's one they play on as well, eh? Like, the brother-in-law is like, he's not a believer in this
cynic,
thing. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, if you're a cynic, then you should speak to Rex, because, oh boy, he didn't believe me either. And then you go speak to him, and he's just like, oh, what? So now he believes you? But that's enough to convince him.
Yeah. What? He believes you. All right.
Yeah, exactly. But I exactly what you say, man. There's no fat on the film, eh? It's just that it's very. They just know it's all down. Everyone moves. Just like a nice puzzle, man. It all goes together.
And I assume that's Fisher's influence.
Yeah.
You know, based on what you were saying earlier, seems to be his thing.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually as well that for all the names of like the bigger films like Dracula and The Mummy and all this thing they've done too, that this is The Devil Rides Out is, you know, it's meant to be like the best of his films, even Terence Fisher and Hammer, like, you know, too. But it's not one that I've really, you know, heard of as such.
I'd heard the title, but I didn't really know anything about it.
Well, that was the kind of like when you were going to do a Hammer film on this episode, but we hadn't really decided which one it was going to be, and then we were kind of looking over the list. The name totally jumped out to me, and then, as I say, like with the poster and stuff too, I was kind of like, and then you said, well, you know, for Terence Fisher, so we're coming at it from sort of two different perspectives. Which is the thing that I think that's the thing that's the best about like the stuff, all the episodes that we choose. There's always some sort of you know, there is the horror aspect of it too, but then I think from just a filmmaking perspective, they're quite interesting films. So it's not just the same old kind of, you know, the same old horrors that get like discussed all the time as well. Although I imagine we'll probably get a few of the cliche ones along at some point.
Yeah.
But I like the...
just another note about the tone, sorry, I was just going to say, I really liked how the opening title sequence, it kind of prepared you for, well, let's say the intensity of the music and what was going to come after, where it was just showing all the different, I guess, demonic symbols and things with this really intense score. And then it's immediately contrasted with a daylight scene of a plane landing. Yeah. You know, I thought that was really cool.
That's the kind of... that they do have that, the opening sequences that are always the things that are really cool as well. And again, it's that the bold bright letters and stuff too. But yeah, they definitely have a formula. And I mean, it's weird because with Hammer, obviously you think about it, it's always these films that you associate with them. I didn't really know that they were still as active as they are. So they did like The Woman in Black and Let Me In quite recently. So I didn't know they were still like kind of going with like some of these films, and obviously, they're like still get widely discussed on social media, but like Scream magazine and all that kind of stuff too. It's just good. It's good that they're still going for like keeping it real, you know, since like the 40s till now, basically. It's just, I don't know. The whole way with the crew that they had, like you're saying, they've obviously got a formula, but they always had a backbone of a cast that they're actors or whatever that they would depend on as well. I don't know if there's really very much like that these days. I don't know how that would go down if for a director to just be like, I know what happens in like comedies and stuff like that. You get the same old Adam Sandler kind of has all the same sort of dudes and that, but for something like horror, for like horror and things, I can't really think of just what would go down if it was the same old people all the time.
Yeah,
maybe Rob Zombie, but I don't know. It's good to. I mean, what kind of films have you been watching recently yourself? When you come into like watching something like this, like is that a sort of cleanse the palate effort?
Palate cleanser. I've got a little list of what I've been watching recently. What was the last film I watched?
Just while you're looking.
Oh, actually, I watched Blue Velvet.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, I'd never seen it. I thought it was really good. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, man. I've seen it. Not for like, I think I watched it like 10 years ago for the first time or something. It's a classic.
It's just one of the Lynch ones that I hadn't seen yet. I've kind of weirdly avoided it over the years. I don't know why.
So with Blue Velvet, there's a thing that's, I think you remember one of my old bosses, whose favourite film was Blade Runner, but his dad, who was a character to say the least, his favourite film of all time was Blue Velvet. And it was just it was like, when he said it, you think like like this wee, probably in his, I don't know what it was, like late 60s or something like that, like wee businessman drives a Jaguar. And it's just like, when he was talking about what his favourite film was going to be, I was expecting it to be like The Searchers or some sort of John Wayne like whatever, man. He's just like, Blue Velvet. I'm like, what? Sort of Dennis Hopper is amazing, it.
It's like, well, yeah.
He's something else anyway. I think there was some whole weird thing with that too, where like Dennis Hopper basically said, as actors tend to do sometimes, they're basically like, no, I am this guy. I need to play that part because I am that guy or something. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. For that, you're that guy.
Yeah. So just final notes on The Devil Rides Out. Did you notice that the demonic cult was called the Left Hand Path?
Oh yeah, I did.
Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where Flanders has his leftorium?
Yeah. And
then he talks about the Latin word for left is sinister.
I don't remember that in The Simpsons. I know that.
Yeah.
Is there like a band called Left Hand Path or something weird? Because when he said when he said it, I was like, oh, yeah, I've heard that like used somewhere, in something like a band or something, but. No, I didn't quite pick up on it, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so sinister meaning left, but also meaning evil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I guess that's like why, like back in the day, people were like left-handed. It's like tied their hand behind their back to make them write with their right hand or something. Some weird child abuse. Yeah, it was a ride, man. The Devil Rides Out. It was a journey to go on.
Yeah, I mean there were certain points where like the tension was almost kind of unbearable, like the way they built it up with the music and the editing, particularly in the Angel of Death scene. A couple other
man, that's like
sequences.
People
it's
having
just
a heart attack at that.
Exactly, seeing that in the cinema. But yeah, I mean, I think this goes along with what I was saying before. It is a roller coaster ride. People were probably like laughing and screaming at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And there's not enough of that. I don't think there's really enough of that like these days, eh? It's kind of like I know it's like for more of the films that I watch, it is more for that like comedy sort of element too. So like the kind of schlock horrors that you get. But obviously this is more not like, I don't know if that's like lowbrow or whatever, eh? This is kind of I don't know. It's a different thing. It's fun. It's like safe kind of horror, I guess. Or something. It's hard to explain.
It's to do with the tone as well. I think it's like you sort of know that good will win. Like part of you knows that there's no way that the good guys are not going to win at the end of this.
Yeah, because there's at no point in the film is Christopher Lee really rattled to the point where you think he's been bested. You know what I mean? He just has to have another think sometimes.
Yeah, he sort of yells "run" at one point. That's about as heated as he gets.
He just has to reassess the situation.
A couple of weird little trivia points. So I was reading up on Leon Green, who he died really recently, the end of June.
Yeah, man. I just actually looked up before we got it. I don't know why. I just clicked on the thing.
Yeah, did you read that he was dubbed in this film? Like, that wasn't his actual voice.
Yeah.
And it's quite unclear why. The Guardian article that I read said it was possibly because he had a similar voice to Christopher Lee. And then there's other weird things where, like, some reports say he was English and some say he was Australian. So, the guy's a bit of a mystery. Yeah.
No, I read that too. And as you say, I saw he died, I think it was the 19th of June, because it was the day before my wedding anniversary. So, but of just old age, it seems. There was nothing. He's just an old guy. It was nothing about it really.
It was the Angel of Death. It was the Angel of Death getting revenge.
Finally came from.
That horse came into his bedroom, like, That was it. It was done.
One of the last man standing from the film. I think I think Tanith's still alive. Yeah, I was clicking on her.
She was quite young, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, she's like married to, or she was married. I think her husband's dead, but like some prince in Italy or something like that. So she's like Princess Nike Origi whatever. So it's like
Nike. Oh yeah. Probably Nike, I guess, but
Nike.
Sure.
Oh man,
sponsorship deal. Just do
Yeah.
it.
That's got to be a thing on every single episode, man. Is me not being able. I'm not that usually that bad with names, but every single episode, there's just something that I can't get my tongue around.
No, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying if her name's Nike, that's a little bit unfortunate. Unless you saw some of the cash, in which case, she's very fortunate.
She just, I just saw a little flick above the E in her name, so I was like, maybe it's pronounced Nike.
Yeah, I was watching a video on that channel Deep Focus Lens. I was talking to you about that before.
Yeah.
And the presenter, she was talking about Nicolas Cage, and she was saying like how Cage's acting, because a lot of people think it's really weird. I really like it, but
I love it, man. He is my hands down favourite actor. Like,
yeah, it just doesn't work for a lot of people. But she was talking about how it's probably because he's actually influenced by the silent era, Lon Chaney and things like that, and it's just again not naturalistic in any way, whereas most acting nowadays is. And I was thinking that Christopher Lee's sort of like a kind of precursor to Nicolas Cage in that way. It's like he's kind of like bridging the gap between what we have now and the silent era when everything was a bit more theatrical.
Yeah, totally, man. I don't know, you know more about that as well, because I never really too much pay attention to the acting, modern wise anyway. I can see totally what you're saying with it being like the whole realistic kind of thing. I don't know why people hate Nick Cage. They think when I say that I like Nick Cage that I'm saying it ironically.
Yeah,
but it's like well, you've seen like Wild at Heart, man. That man gives 100. That man gives 110%. Like, then flips out of cars and just like absolute apeshit, man.
It's actually another Lynch film I've not seen. It seems like you've seen quite a lot of Lynch films. I've seen I don't know, I've probably seen like 5, I guess.
Yeah, Wild at Heart's probably one of my favourite ones, I guess. You showed me Eraserhead, I think, first. That kind of like, I remember feeling a bit like, I didn't know how I felt after that. I enjoyed it, but it made me one of these ones, like we'd say, like it makes me feel kind of weird watching it. I've never watched it since, actually. So that was probably like 2005 or something.
It is quite unsettling.
Yeah. Blue Velvet is as well, I guess, in a certain thing, but I think that Wild at Heart I only watched a few years ago, I think, for the first time, and probably just because Nicolas Cage was in it. More than it being a Lynch film. What else have I don't know what else I've seen of him.
Well, he's done a few. I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link to his filmography. But yeah, I was just going to say Christopher Lee's character, so his full name is Nicolas Duc de Richelieu, or Richelieu, something like this.
Yeah.
And I thought, because Cardinal Richelieu was the historical figure he served as the villain in Three Musketeers.
Yeah, I was going to say Three Musketeers.
And I don't know, I just wondered if maybe Dennis Wheatley was a fan of Alexandre Dumas or something like that.
Yeah, I never actually picked up on that until you said it there, and then it's like, D'Artagnan, man.
Might just be a stretch. D'Artagnan,
the
that
cartoon.
was classic. That was classic. Yeah, that was my introduction to that whole thing as well. It was great.
I definitely, as I say, I never heard of this Dennis Wheatley before that. But as I say, just with the mixed reviews and some of the books from, I don't know, some of them back. This is the thing, because I just have this, sometimes some of the old books that have got, they're meant to be classics, they're just so hard going. And there's this guy's already kind of getting told that this one's hard going. But then you think, there was stuff I thought Frankenstein was going to be a bit of a drag. And then when I actually read it, I'm like, man, this is timeless. This is amazing. The writing's just ace, for now even, So I don't know, maybe it's worth, checking out.
Give Dennis a chance, you won't be disappointed.
Aye, well, Christopher Lee was a fan.
I
don't know. Because you said they did sequels and stuff to this as well, right? Or the books and stuff, anyway, certainly.
It was a 6-part series, I think, but I don't know if it was just the same character, thrown into different situations without a sort of continuity,
Yeah. So he was as you say, a kind of an action hero of sorts.
Precursor to Bond, some sort of between the era of Sherlock Holmes and James Bond was Nicolas Duc de Richelieu.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know why. Well, I mean, Christopher Lee obviously pushing it on Hammer, saying that he wanted to do it. It was weird though, because for some reason I was reading a thing where it was like that Christopher Lee didn't really have that much. Well, maybe not that much, but he didn't have as much clout as what Peter Cushing did. He seemed to be able to kind of decide what was going down there, whereas Christopher Lee kind of got ignored largely for some of his suggestions at times. So it's quite interesting that he managed to get that one, considering he was, you see him as being like McKellen and all that, kind of one of these old school, like, acting gods.
Well, I just see him as having a lot of authority, and also you probably wouldn't want to get into an argument with him.
Yeah, not if he's
you never know what might happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen that Lord of the Rings making of, where it's like he was talking about his death scene? Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Lord of the Rings. His character dies, and he gets stabbed in the back by Wormtongue. You remember this whole scene?
Yeah.
And there was a thing where Peter Jackson was trying to direct him on how to act when you get stabbed in the back, and Christopher Lee was like, I was a commando during World War II. I know how someone acts when they get stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Tell.
Yeah, no, I don't think he was being a dick about it. I think he was just like, oh, by the way, this is what happens. And he'd said it in like explicit detail. And then they didn't ask him any more questions. There's okay, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, on you go, mate. It's weird too, these like films that they always do have that kind of military background, eh? Not Lord of the Rings, obviously, but I'm talking about like with The Devil Rides Out, where it's like these guys, they're always, their backstories, I suppose just with it being, well, when was this one? Did you say this one was set? Because I thought...
Set in 1929. The book came out in 1934.
Right, okay. So I don't know if it's maybe supposed to be like more like some sort of World War One type thing, but I don't know. There's always just seems to be that these people have kind of got some kind of military background in these like horror films or something in times. It's weird the way they do it.
Yeah, I think Lord of the Rings was meant to be a comment on World War One.
Oh, right,
but,
yeah. Lord of the Rings. Aye, because J.R.R. Tolkien was on it, like when they have that scene where there's like the river where all the bodies or skeletons or whatever it is, it's meant to be like something to do with the Somme or something like that.
The dead marshes, yeah.
Yeah, total fucked up, like. No wonder that guy like lost his mind or whatever, coming up with these crazy Elvish languages and things like that. There's another book actually as well that I've never read, because I mean it's maybe quite hard going. It's lots of describing the scenery for like 40 pages.
Yeah, you find out what the walls are made of.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. So yeah, any final thoughts on The Devil Rides Out?
I thought it was ace. Honestly, I mean, I give it like, I don't know, like 8 out of 10. I don't know why I wouldn't give it 10 out of 10. Just, I thought it was ace, man. It kept my attention for the whole way through it. And just, it was really enjoyable. Definitely, Hammer, if you haven't watched any Hammer films, I guess, then definitely worth checking out. It's different. This one for sure is different to like the ones I've seen, like The Mummy. The thing I liked about that one, that like The Mummy as well, compared to like some of the Universal ones we see, like I love the black and white. And in The Mummy and stuff, I just love the opposite of that, how they just went with like all these mental colours and stuff. Like, so there's like jars that have got all these like purples and greens and all these weird colours and stuff in it. So it's an interesting, different take. And they're just, they're kind of comforting to watch, I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I think I would agree, 8 out of 10. Probably it wouldn't be a 10 out of 10 for me, because I just don't think it would have that much rewatchability. Yeah. But in terms of like how it's made and the story and everything, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely, man. So if anyone else has not seen it, then definitely get it watched and give us any comments as well if you have seen it, because we like to interact with people, which hasn't been happening because I need to get better on the social media. So we'll try that for the next month too. Have you got anything else to add before we finish up here?
Just people should watch this film. It's basically the same thing I say at the end every month, I think. Just good film. We've not watched one bad film yet.
Yeah, totally.
So, touch wood. We've done all right.
I saw, to go on that, I did see a film that was called Straight Edge Kegger, which is a horror film about people who are straight edge, which appealed to me to see how it was, and it kind of doesn't look like it's going to be very good. So maybe we could watch that at some point and maybe take the piss if it's going to be terrible. Not that I want to judge it before I've seen it, but I'm judging it because I don't see how it could possibly be good.
It might be great.
It could be great. It could be so bad it's good. Yeah, we need to get on something like that. Yeah, so as you say, we catchphrase then. You need to see this film.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Thanks again for listening, and we'll all catch you again next month. Thanks everyone for checking out the podcast again this month. Next time we're going to be watching one of the classic splat sticks, and I can't wait because those are my absolute favourites. But until